There are many of us who would assert that Heddle Nash was the finest lyric tenor of this century. He had enough metal and drama in his voice to sound alarms, as in that incipit from Judas Maccabeus, but he also had an elegance and charm that made him ideal for Mozart. He was Glyndebourne's preferred pre-war Ferrando, Don Basilio, Pedrillo, and Don Ottavio. Dalla sua pace from Don Giovanni, recorded in 1929 when Heddle Nash was 33. He was a great favourite at the London proms, singing twice or more every year in the 30s. Like the conductor, Sir Henry Wood, Nash was a Londoner, and when the two talked together, apparently the orchestra sometimes used to laugh at their rather high-pitched Cockney patois. Where, I wondered, did that strange name Heddle come from? Fortunately, for family matters and guidance on Nash's career, I was able to talk a few days ago to his son, John Heddle Nash, a well-known baritone in his day.
You see, when eventually I was going to become a singer, I said to my dad, I'll just call myself John Nash. And he said, no. He said, the Heddle part of our name, although we haven't used a hyphen, the name Heddle comes from the Orkneys. It's a Viking name from the Orkneys. And we've always kept it in as a sort of extra second name.
He studied in Italy, didn't he? How did that come about?
The very first thing my dad did, apart from a few oratorios in England, he went to America with the Portrecca marionettes of Rome. And there they the policy was that the company, they're still going around the world, by the way, the company perform an opera with puppets doing the acting and live singers behind the backcloth in those days. And my dad used to say, what a marvellous way of being paid for learning the repertoire. And from Chicago, he went straight over to Italy to study with some people he had recommended.
In Milan, I think it was.
Yeah, Milan, yes, mostly in Milan, and a place called Rapallo on the coast, with the blind singer who was very good to him, and they got on very well. And after a couple of years, he said, "That's it. I've got it now. I've been very careful, but I've got it. It won't go wrong now." And it never did.
And what did he sing? He sang the Italian roles. Barber.
Oh, yes.
Rigoletto.
Well, over there a little bit, but he soon came back here, you see. In about 1926, he came back to London and went straight in to have an audition with Lady Berries, indeed, at the Old Vic. She was a wonderful character. She said to him, "Look, I want you to help me out tomorrow night with Rigoletto. If you'll do this for me, I will only pay you £5. I'll pay you much more later on, but if you'll do it for me, I'll make sure every London critic is there." She was as good as her word, and it was a big breakthrough. He never looked back.
In my heart all are equally cherished, every thought of exclusion within me I smother. None is dearer to me than another. In their turn I for each one would die. Let the future decide who may bless me, while I woo every flower delighted. If today one my love requited, for another, tomorrow I sigh, for another, tomorrow I sigh. To be constant, the heart must be fettered, 'tis the slavery hateful to every true lover. Let me roam new delights to discover. From a tyrant love will waywardly fly. I deride jealous husband and lover, ne'er my fair flowery bud yet. They thunder, eyes of Argus, were they 10 times 100. If a woman's smile allured me, I would boldly defy. I would boldly defy.
Questo o quella in Verdi's Rigoletto, although it comes out in Macfarren's libretto as "In my heart all are equally cherished." Heddle Nash, every inch there the fickle duke. He had a way of showing character, pointing music and text in a natural yet remarkable way that showed a rare artistry and faultless technique. Here he is, setting the mood and painting a picture in an aria from Bizet's The Pearl Fishers, a languorous seascape expressed in half voice. From the Pearl-Fishers, it's Je crois entendre encore in the French. Fine accompaniment there from Sir Malcolm Sargent and the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic. Nash's heyday was at a time when opera in English was more in demand than now. He sang in French, Italian and German. He was the first British David in Meistersinger at Covent Garden, singing in German there, and his performance was incomparable, according to all who heard him. Alas, there's no recording. I asked John Heddle Nash about his father's diction. How did he acquire that clarity?
When my father started doing opera, it was at the Old Vic. And the policy of the Old Vic was opera in English, and also at the Old Vic during the week they alternated opera, Shakespeare, Grand Opera, Shakespeare, Grand Opera, Shakespeare. With him, Olivier, Gielgud, Ralph Richardson, Peggy Ashcroft, all of whom spoke beautifully and could paint brilliant pictures in the English language. And I'm sure my dad just absorbed that. And certainly when he sang oratorio in English and opera in English, he was painting brilliant pictures, such as people very rarely do even now. There was he and Dennis Noble went through the same school, you know, and had to use English, and eventually learnt to use English so graphically that an opera phrase, he would look at an opera phrase and he would pick out the key word of the arch. By lifting that key word, the whole thing came to life like poetry. This is just my own opinion, but I'll die before I admit that it's not so.
In a coupe, yes, in carriage and pair, did she merrily greet me? Well, Musetta, I questioned, how's your heart? It beats not, or I don't feel it. Thanks to the velvet I'm wearing. I'm glad, very glad. I'm glad, very glad. You humbug, you. You're fretting and fuming. It beats not. Bravo. And I saw too Musetta, Mimi. You saw her. How strange, rode in her carriage in grand apparel, just like a duchess. Delighted, I'm glad to hear it. You lie, you're fighting with love. Now to work, now to work. This pen's too awful, this infamous paintbrush. Fickle-hearted, a beauteous days departed. Those hands so dainty, oh fragrant, shining tress. How is it that my brush with speed mechanical is moved and fast as bright as and though I would be painting landscapes, meadows, woodlands fair in springtime, my bride refuses to perform its office, but paints dark eyes and to red smiling lips. The features of Musetta haunt me
the fourth-act duet from the two Bohemians in Puccini's opera. Beecham recorded a memorable, complete fourth act in Italian of La Bohème with Lisa Perli, John Brownlee and Nash. It's still available. Do get it if you can. But I thought it was a bit too long to include here, so I just gave you the opening duet, but in an English version with Heddle's friend Denis Noble. Both so flexible, idiomatic and clear. Here's John Heddle Nash again, introducing one of Nash's best records, a recitative and aria from Handel's Jephthah.
When my father was teaching me to sing, he made a great point of saying all singers should never neglect their oratorios, because the drama and declamation would come in very handy when it came to opera. And you see, in Jephthah, it's concentrated drama. You know, Cecil B. DeMille said that one page of the Bible is enough for a film. And poor old Jephthah, he goes off to fight this battle. Before he goes, he wants to be successful. He makes a vow to Jehovah. If he's successful in battle, he will then sacrifice the first living being he meets on his return, sacrifice them to Jehovah. His daughter runs to meet him on his return. And you get this agonized recitative, deeper and deeper still, and a lovely aria, waft her angels through the skies. It's gorgeous.
Deeper and deeper still, thy goodness, child, pierceth a father's bleeding heart, and checks the cruel sentence on my faltering tongue. Oh, let me whisper it to the raging wind, or howling deserts, for the ears of men it is too shocking. Yet have I not vowed, and can I think the great Jehovah sleeps like Chemosh and such fabled deities? Ah, no, heaven heard my thoughts and wrote them down. this that racks my brain and pours into my breast 1,000 pangs that lash me into madness. Horrid thought, horrid thought. My only daughter, so dear a child, doomed by a father. Yes, the vow is past, and Gilead hath triumphed o'er his foe. Therefore, tomorrow's dawn, tomorrow's dawn.
Hail, Jephthah. Recitative, Deeper and Deeper Still. Aria, Waft Her Angels. Heddle Nash in Oratorio. He was much in demand, and he looked good too. Tall, slim, good-looking, a model of stillness on the platform, as I remember. I also saw him in opera, an elegant Barber of Seville, in English with the Carl Rosa opera at Harrow on the Hill on a Saturday afternoon in wartime. After the war, in Manon at Covent Garden, he seemed past his best. Desmond Shaw Taylor wrote that Nash sounded dog-tired. But he still made some fine records and concert performances well after the 40s, as well as a treasured 1945 Dream of Gerontius recording, with a substantial part of which I shall be ending this hour. As well as opera and oratorio, Nash made one highly successful foray into the world of operetta in the 30s, singing opposite Annie Ahlers in Millerke's The Du Barry. It ran for 397 performances. The best-known tenor tune is If I Am Dreaming. If I Am Dreaming by Millerke from the musical comedy The Du Barry, Heddle Nash in 1932. A couple of years later, he joined in what was probably thought of at the time as the Glyndebourne experiment, singing Ferrando in Così fan tutte on the second night of the first season. It was repeated in 1935 and put onto wax in that year, Fritz Busch conducting. The cast was international. Ina Suez as Fiordiligi, Luisa Helletsgruber as Dorabella, Irene Eisinger, Despina, John Brownlee as Don Alfonso. The Australian base was new that year. Willy Dom Graf Fassbender as Guglielmo, and the only Englishman in the cast, Heddle Nash as Ferrando. It was a marvellous team performance, and rather than a solo, I would like to show you Heddle Nash as part of that ensemble. But of course, when he and Guglielmo sing in thirds or sixths, it is Nash you hear more of. And when the pace quickens of the Act 1 finale, notice his exciting coloratura, a good deal more audible than the women's voices in the same sort of runs. The naughty pair of lads, heavily disguised, have played at taking poison and have been cured by magnets, and are now trying to get their cure confirmed by a kiss from the girls, aided by the maid Despina and Don Alfonso, who started the whole plot going with a bet with the boys. As the music starts now, you can hear the boys first in thirds, then Despina and Don Alfonso in sixths, soon followed by the girls. Così fan tutte, Glyndebourne Champagne, 1935 vintage. Wonderful. Così fan tutte, Act 1 finale, with our hero, Heddle Nash, more than upholding England's honour among the Glyndebourne international stars. During the early war years, Nash and several other prominent British singers did a big tour of Australia and New Zealand. Isabel Bailey was on the tour, and she once wrote of Heddle, "As a born singer with a voice of exceptional beauty and most unusual timbre, difficult to describe. The best I can do is to say that it had a youthful, eager quality that made it instantly recognizable." Isabel Bailey. After 2 years in the Antipodes, Heddle Nash arrived home to find his diary rather empty, and it was during this time, comparing notes with a colleague who asked him if he wasn't loaded down with the Messiahs, that Heddle made the irreverent and exasperated remark that's gone down in musical history, or gossip, saying, "No, his book was empty, and me the best bloody Messiah in the business." Heddle Nash was also in demand for recitals. I haven't come across any Schubert, Schumann or Brahms on record, but there are odd numbers by Liszt and Richard Strauss. However, for a song with piano, I'd like to play you one of 2 settings of Shelley, Nash recorded with Gerald Moore for the Delius Society in the late 30s. To the Queen of My Heart. Well, I think Delius must have set this to a German translation, because the word setting's not always quite right. It's a beautiful song, nevertheless.
In broad daylight, I'll tell thee a part of the thoughts that start to being when thou art nigh, and thy beauty more bright than the stars of night shall seem as a weft from the sky. When the pale moonbeam on tower and stream sheds a flood of silver sheen, how I love to gaze as the cold rays strays o'er thy face, my heart's throned queen. were there in the cool night air, but I dare not in broad daylight. Oh, come then and row to the sea and the grove.
To the Queen of My Heart, Shelley, Delius, Gerald Moore, Heddle Nash. In 1950, Bernard Shaw wrote an article about singers, saying it was all rot about Golden Age singers. We sing, and I quote, "we sing much better than our grandfathers. I have heard all the greatest tenors from Mario to Heddle Nash, and I know what I'm writing about. For, like Dereshke, I was taught to sing by my mother, not by Garcia." G.B. Shaw, unquote. And Shaw's friend Edward Elgar thought highly, as did everybody else, of Nash's Gerontius. He was the youngest sounding Gerontius. So, with this in mind, I asked Nash's son what his father might have thought were his finest achievements.
It's difficult to assess those things. It's all tied up with time. You start out with certain talents, and you use them, and you learn a certain amount, and then you go on to other things, so that by the time he came to do Gerontius, he was able to stand there without the book and without moving, but acting with the voice. All that operatic experience was poured into the travails of this poor soul. After all, when you think of it, the poor old Gerontius dies. Before he can meet his maker, he has to pass through the hordes of hell. You know, horrible old things. But he does, with the help of the angel, and finally gets there. So he could portray all that, and all the drama inherent in the biblical stories and the oratorios, you know, all came to light. So one built on the other, and when he came to do Gerontius, it was just a natural climax of all his past work.
nation,